We have so many topics to talk about, but we are pleased to have on the program with us Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Dr. Paul, thank you for taking time out to be with us today.
Glad to be with you, Jason.
Let me ask you first, sir, what was the most disturbing detail to emerge from the hearings in your point of view?
Well, the fact that they were calling and asking for help. Colonel Gibson calls and asks for authority to send special forces from Tripoli to Benghazi, and they're denied. I'd like to know who told him that he couldn't do it. Did this come from the White House? Did this come from Hillary Clinton? These hearings today raise a lot more questions about Hillary Clinton's involvement in denying special forces. We already know that she didn't read the cables asking for security help, asking for more security forces, and that these were denied in the 6 months leading up to the attacks. But now there's question who was involved with, denying the reinforcements.
You made news when Hillary testified in front of your committee, and you flat out told her that if it were up to you, she would be out of a job because somebody has to be held accountable, and she's the leader of the State Department. This took place on her watch. She would be out of a job. We know this was a cover-up now. I mean, we know. We have the evidence in front of us. We know that the talking points saying this was a terrorist attack that was planned, those were scrubbed in favor of the spontaneous demonstration from a YouTube video, and we had Susan Rice go and make the appearances on 5 Sunday Talk Show. So now that we know, we have the whistleblowers who testified today. We have the evidence that you're pointing to. We have the evidence of talking points being scrubbed to minimalize the administration's ineptitude. What can actually be done to Hillary Clinton or someone in the administration? Where is the accountability going to be set?
I think Hillary Clinton needs to come before the committee and testify and set this straight. So I think she has been before the committee now, but they have new information. And I think we need to know who issued the command that said no troops would be allowed to go from Tripoli to Benghazi as reinforcements. The troops all wanted to go. Apparently Colonel Gibson was disappointed that he couldn't go. Who told him that he couldn't go? Did it come from AFRICOM? Did it come from a general? Was the general given this order by Hillary Clinton? And so I think really there are several questions that still need to be asked. But the bottom line is that for 6 months, not in the heat of battle, but for 6 months prior to this attack, Hillary Clinton was beseeched for more security, 16-member security details. She was asked specifically by the ambassador as well as the head of the detail to remain in the country, and this was denied. And so I think really there were some inexcusable mistakes made by Secretary Clinton. They really should preclude her from ever holding an office where she has such responsibility.
I know you've said that before, that she should never hold office anymore because of the information that's come out. But and let's say she doesn't. That still doesn't rectify the fact or remedy the fact afterwards that she could have blatantly lied to the committee she testified and right in front of you, and someone in her department that obstructed or tried to obstruct the whistleblowers from coming forward, certainly obstructed the information from being released before a presidential election. So, I mean, what can be done just about that?
If you lie under oath, it's a felony. Now, whether or not she was required to take an oath when she testified in the Senate or the House before, sometimes I think you're not required to take an oath. And so there is a legal question whether or not she was under oath or whether or not that would be perjury if there was someone who lied to the committee. But someone will have to look into that because she testified both on the House and the Senate. And I think there are real questions, not only about the decisions that happened on that day and the decisions afterwards, whether there was a cover-up. There's still questions as to why the cover-up. I don't understand there being a political reason that just saying, oh, this wasn't a terrorist attack, we want to say this about a movie. The other question is whether or not this had something to do with what the CIA annex was doing in Benghazi. You know, the week before the ambassador was killed, a Turkish ship leaves from Libya loaded with arms, and these arms ended up going to the Syrian rebels at a time when we said we were not involved with transfer of arms. Ambassador Stevens met with the Turkish attaché, I think the day he was killed. The question is, what was the CIA annex doing there, and were they involved with transferring weapons? You know, those are some question lines that I don't think occurred today, but I think are still we need to determine.
We're speaking with Dr. Rand Paul, who is a Kentucky senator, and you're listening to Jason Mattera filling in for Jerry Doyle today. Switching gears over to immigration, and even though, interestingly enough, every polling data shows that really immigration is far down on the list of priorities most Americans care about, so is gun control. But apparently Democrats keep wanting to, at least in the Senate, keep wanting to bring these issues out and talk about them, hold hearings, and have this consume the national conversation. On immigration, Barack Obama said something recently. It was interesting while he was in Mexico. He said that this immigration bill, sponsored by the Gang of Eight that you've been critical of, it's a compromise bill, and even he didn't get everything that he wanted, which made me wonder. I mean, this bill is proposed to us as an eventual legal path for at least 11 million people and to beef up border security, make our border at least 90% secure. So what is it that Barack Obama didn't get that he wanted?
Well, I'm not sure of that, but the biggest concern I have over it is if we're going to have border security, it needs to be in the bill. It shouldn't be a plan to have border security or a report on border security or a commission on border security. It should be. But what happens if they don't meet this 90% effectiveness rate? You get a report or you get a commission that issues a report. That to me is sort of toothless. And a lot of the border security is left up to unelected bureaucrats to determine. So we're going to have an amendment that will say otherwise. It will say that if you want to document workers and get them work visas, it'll happen gradually, but it'll be dependent on border security, and we'll vote every year on whether the border is becoming more secure. We'll dictate that a certain miles of fence have to be built. We'll dictate that when you're captured coming across illegally, that you're not released until your trial date, so you don't flee inward into the country. And the other thing that's most important about this bill that I don't think is clear yet, you have to have a functioning work visa program. They're actually putting new caps on agricultural work visas. The main driver of illegal immigration in our country are people coming in to pick crops that are not using the work visa program. Right now there's no cap on work visas, but the problem is the work visa program just doesn't work. Farmers don't want to use it. It's expensive. Takes 2.5 months to use. It's a paper trail. I think they are trying to fix some of those things, but I think it's counterproductive to try to fix the work visa program and then cap how many people can use it, because if more people want to come in than use it and there are more jobs, that's the driver of illegal immigration.
Well, let me ask you this. The face of this immigration bill is one of your colleagues, Marco Rubio, and it seems like there's been almost an evolution in his persona from when this bill was first released until now. When it was first released, he was very confident that this bill was in its form was the right thing to do, but now recent comments from him is saying, well, what our job is to do during the markup process and the amendment process is to move this immigration bill to the right. That really doesn't elicit confidence on my end, and I know it's certainly not going to elicit confidence from many conservatives when we're acknowledging that the starting point for this bill has to be moved in the right direction, and it currently isn't in the right direction, and this is essentially going to be brought to the floor and have the amendment process controlled by Harry Reid and Patrick Leahy and Chuck Schumer. So why in the world would we even think this is going to be moved in the right direction?
Well, I think it's still open. I think it is a possibility. And the reason I say that is that the biggest complaint conservatives have had, myself included, is that whenever we've tried to do anything or to try to make any kind of progress on immigration reform, they promise us that they'll secure the border, but the promise is always at a date yet to be determined, at a later date. So my point is that conservatives, myself included, to be pleased, aren't going to accept a promise of border security or a report or a plan to build a fence. It's going to have to be in the bill. And so that's what we're going to attempt to do, is put border security into the bill. The only way I know of to be assured that border security is in there is that every year we vote on border security, and that any of the documentation of the undocumented, which means giving work visas to those already here who have overstayed their visas, giving them work visas will be dependent on us voting each year. If we vote and Congress says the border's not secure, then that stops. and you don't keep giving out work visas to those who came here and are undocumented. It only proceeds if the border is secure. I think if you do that, then you will assure that Congress stays active in this and that border security really happens. The other thing you have to do is you have to put teeth in this. You have to go ahead and say 100 miles of fence need to be built in year 1, the second 100 in year 2, the third 100 in year 3 has to be a double-layer fence. We have to have this, effective prosecution of those coming in illegally, and we have to verify that people are citizens, and we have to be able to prove and exclude them from both voting and from welfare while they're here on work visas.
We're speaking with Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Lastly, sir, I gotta ask you. I know that you're making a trip out to Iowa, and then you're making a trip out to New Hampshire, two early primary states. Anything you want to share?
I think, Jason, that just must be a coincidence. I just that they both showed up on my schedule. And I was
did.
Look, guys, I'm in Iowa and New Hampshire. People are going to think things.
Yeah.
So,
just a little coinkydink, huh? That's all.
Everybody understands that when you go to early primary states that there is attention paid to those who are speaking there, and it is a way to talk about how we grow the Republican Party, how we get it bigger, and how we start winning elections. I want to be part of that process because I do think part of it, and that's why I'm open-minded on this immigration reform. I'm not adamantly saying I'm not, by hell or high water, I'm not voting for anything. I want to be for immigration reform. One, because I think we need to fix it, but two, I also acknowledge that I think the Hispanic vote needs to be more open to Republicans and could vote Republican, but they need to see that we are open-minded on this issue. And if we're closed-minded on this issue, they then close their mind to us on other issues. And I'm thoroughly convinced of that. So there's practical politics here, but I also think it's the right thing to do. I also think we need to open our minds to how to court the African-American vote. Be blatant about it, that we want African-Americans to think about Republicans. We want to be the party that is for school choice and for educational opportunity, and that the educational establishment is preventing that. I think there's room for us to improve in all of these areas, and I'm going to keep pushing in that direction.
Senator Rand Paul on the Jerry Doyle Show. Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Jason.
Good luck in Iowa and New Hampshire. Okay, so much more to talk about with me, Jason Mattera, filling in for